Terrorist sleeper cells could be scattered throughout the homeland. A counterterrorism expert will tell us what to watch out for amid the tensions with Iran.
I'd like to thank you, Joe Biden, for importing the world's terrorists into America.
Chris Bedford will apply the art of the deal to the Middle East and predict Donald Trump's next foreign policy move.
I don't know what he's going to do. You don't know what he's going to do. He doesn't know what he's going to do. We're going to find out.
And the LA Dodgers are freaking out over an ICE raid that may not have even happened. Julio Rosas will break down the bizarre case of events of he said, she said.
Much as I'd like to make a joke or crack a punchline about an ICE raid happening at Dodger Stadium, I'll just say I wish they went after the Catholic drag queens.
Well, Blaze News, the mandate starts right now. Good evening, Patriots. Happy Friday. I'm Jill Savage, joined by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
Happy to be here on what I'm calling Margarita Friday.
It is a good Friday for sure. But you know what, MP, there is a lot going on in the world right now. And let's go ahead and add this one to the list because CBS put out a report that the FBI has increased domestic surveillance in the U.S. Senior White House reporter Jennifer Jacobs wrote on X, quote, FBI's Kash Patel has increased efforts to monitor possible domestic sleeper cells linked to Hezbollah since Israel's offensive began earlier this month. So here with more, we have Kyle Shideler. He's a senior analyst for the Center for Security Policy. So Kyle, thanks so much for coming on the show. So my question to you is, okay, we've probably known that there are sleeper cells in the country for quite some time. So why are we getting this information right now? Is this a ramp up of new surveillance, or is this something that has just been under the radar for a while that they're pulling back into the news cycle right now?
Well, one of the things to pay attention to is the tricky semantics of sleeper cell. When you're talking about a sleeper cell, are you talking about a group of terrorists who completely blend in with the American mainstream, are not otherwise observable, and then just one day receive a coded radio message and go blow things up? That's usually not how it works. I'm not saying it can't happen, but typically what we see from cells inside the United States linked to terror groups is that they're actually very active. They're usually engaging in propaganda. They're engaging in fundraising. They're engaging in recruitment, especially when you're talking about Hezbollah. They're doing a lot to move money, smuggling cigarettes, producing synthetic weed. There are a whole bunch of criminal activities that terror groups like Hezbollah are conducting inside the United States all the time. One of the things they like to do, buy up U.S. military hardware like night vision goggles and ship them back to Lebanon. So there are a lot of things these groups are typically doing where they would run afoul of law enforcement and you could interdict them pretty much at will. The question is, when do we choose to do that and how closely are we watching?
So do you think that the CBS report is a genuine scoop, or is this a strategic leak linked to something larger going on?
I think my instinct is it's a strategic leak. Someone inside the FBI or DOJ either wants to make sure that everybody knows that they're doing their job, which part of your job is not letting everybody know what you're doing. So fail on that part. But so there's that, right? CYA. We've got it covered. Don't worry about it. There might be some of that. The other, I think, is to play into a narrative that if Donald Trump should decide to act, we are likely to be hit here. I think that's the subtext of the timing of the leak, which is that people are concerned that Donald Trump might do something. Here's a piece of data that might turn people off of encouraging Donald Trump to act.
So if we look at just what the American people should be paying attention to, right? If we're just trying to go beyond the headlines here, what would you say, what kind of attacks would they be capable of, and what should the American people actually be looking out for here?
Well, as I said, most Hezbollah cells in the United States are fundraising and propaganda cells, but there's good evidence that many of them do have some level of military training. What they would be capable of could vary broadly. Anything from, large-scale vehicular IEDs to small-scale, small arms attacks, suicide vest bombings, anything in between. But historically, that's not what we've seen from Iran when they try to operate inside the United States. Historically, they've tried to usually come up with some kind of proxy veil. We saw, for example, when they wanted to target the Saudi ambassador in Washington, D.C. a few years back, they tried to hire one of the Mexican drug cartels. Bad news for them. The guy they tried to hire turned out to be the DEA. Similar situation in the attempted assassination against Donald Trump, where you have individuals inside Iran contacting individuals who put themselves out to be hitmen, who were not Iranian agents. They were not trained Hezbollah actors. So, I do question if Iran has to use those kinds of assets in order to conduct an attack on the president. How strong is their infrastructure in the United States, or is it just the case that they don't want to waste infrastructure on a low probability success attack?
So that's my question too. I mean, we've been hearing about this for a while. I mean, attempted assassination of President Trump. This is coming up now. Obviously, we're in the middle of this. The whole world is watching what's going to happen when it comes to the U.S.'s decision here. I guess I wonder. I mean, you see these reports and you think, oh gosh, it doesn't sound good. But we haven't really seen anything from them that's been very successful or big or made any kind of splash. So what would they want to do now?
Well, I think you have to give some credit, and I'm not one who does this very often, but you have to give some credit to U.S. intelligence on breaking up some of those incidents, like the Saudi ambassador plot, where they were able to interject people into the plot and to break it up ahead of time, which is actually what you want from your intelligence community when it comes to foreign actors and foreign terrorist organizations. So that's a rare W for them. There's always the question of what don't we know, right? We've seen a couple of failed plots. Of course, the things that you see are the failed plots, right? You don't see the successful plots until they happen. So what is occurring that we don't know? Matt, you mentioned in the beginning the border being wide open for 4 years under the Biden administration. As a matter of fact, we know that under Biden, DHS actually let people into the country who said that they were Hezbollah. And they did not detain them out of fear that the individual may catch COVID while in detainment. So we know that there's exposures that we just don't have covered. And we hope the guys in the FBI do in Washington, but I don't have a high degree of confidence in that.
Yeah, heaven forbid anybody claiming to be with a terrorist organization go out and get COVID. We could never allow such a thing. We've seen some online chatter about potential cyber attacks that might be coming into the country. Do you see that happening? How much of a real threat assessment should we look at this?
It's certainly possible. How much of that infrastructure exists since the Israeli attack began, I don't know. But the Iranians do have a highly qualified cyber capability. They have hit us before in a number of different areas. And we have such a vast internet infrastructure that there's always some target, whether it's at the lowest local level or at the federal level. So, you can cause a great deal of havoc in this country through cyber attacks, just going down to the level of the county government and attacking, a local water or sewer waste treatment plant. And in fact, that is something that has occurred in the past. So we have just a lot of really soft targets when it comes to the cyberspace. So I have to consider it as a possibility. What I don't know is, are those Iranian hackers very comfortably in their basements with all of their monitors up doing their work? Or are they keeping their head down in the bunker lest the Israelis drop a bomb on them? That I don't.
There's also the question of if you think this intelligence could be used, and more like it maybe coming, could be used to justify a strike on Iran.
Maybe, but I don't think so. People have been warning about Hezbollah activities in the United States for decades. What we saw under the Obama administration was a strong effort to suppress any evidence that Hezbollah was active in the Western Hemisphere, because they were afraid that it would interrupt an Iran nuclear deal. For example, the DEA had been working on a major case called Operation Cassandra, detailing Hezbollah's role in drug trafficking, money laundering, and the like. And they were ready to go forward, and the Obama administration put the halt to it because they didn't want it to interfere with the Iran deal. So my suggestion is that I believe leaks coming out of the if you will, the deep state, the administrative state, the intelligence community will mostly be negative in an attempt to prevent the United States from taking action vis-a-vis Iran.
Well, we've been seeing a lot of back and forth within the intelligence community, whether you believe that Tulsi Gabbard was given false information. And, there's so much going on within the Trump administration right now. This whole story started because the FBI and Kash Patel, they had this report out with CBS. How do you view what's happening, the steps that are being taken right now within the intelligence community itself?
There's probably a degree of disagreement in and amongst the intelligence community, which frankly is what you want. I mean, you want them doing their assessments, coming up with different data, and then hashing it out amongst each other. So I'm not surprised if CIA is seeing different things than ODNI and the like. I will say traditionally, as I said, the intelligence community has been against action in Iran and has taken great steps to leak things that would prevent action against Iran, going all the way back to 2003 and the National Intelligence Assessment on the Iranian nuclear capability. But at the end of the day, I think, and Donald Trump has made this evidently clear, at the end of the day, the President of the United States is going to look at all of the available intelligence to him, military intelligence, signals intelligence, electronics intelligence, what little human intelligence we have, the information we get from the Israelis and we get from other regional partners. He's going to look at all of that, and he's going to have to make his own decision. And a lot of that intelligence is going to be contradictory. A lot of that intelligence is going to be biased one way or the other. And he's going to have to wade through all of that. He's going to be the man who has to make the call. And I don't envy him having to do that.
So let's zoom out a little bit and just think about, everything that's been going on since the election when it comes to all these agencies. As us on the show, by the way, we should say Kyle's one of our favorite people. I know Kyle in real life even, or at least on many chats. When we're concerned here with the mandate being implemented, right, of the president, of everything that everyone fought for to win in 2024. And a central part of that is reforming the administrative state. And a central part of that is reforming the real deep state, or the intelligence agencies, which have been a problem in many ways for such a long time. So do you see any bright spots, any good things that are happening there? And what's your take on where we're at?
Not yet. I mean, they're talking about massive bureaucracies that are very difficult to move. And I just haven't seen the kind of personnel changes and, frankly, closures of offices, restructuring of agencies and capabilities that I know I was hopeful for that we would see when President Trump came into office. We just haven't seen that thus far. The president's appointees are still trying to get their feet underneath them. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult running one of these agencies because, on the one hand, all of your power and influence can only be exacted through the personnel in the agency, the bureaucrats, whom you cannot trust. And so, on the one hand, you want to be relevant to the president. You want to be able to provide capability to the president when he calls upon you. And on the other hand, you can't trust the people that you rely upon to do that. So how do you strike that balance? I would say the one shiny, happy place in the U.S. government right now is the U.S. State Department. I've been very impressed with their restructuring efforts. But on the intelligence community side, both defensively in terms of like the FBI and DHS, and offensively in terms of like the CIA and the like, I haven't seen the kind of restructuring that I know a lot of people were hoping for, myself included.
Well, I mean, amen to that. And in a state, we have to say, I mean, we've seen actual, agencies that censoring outfit they have just go bye-bye. They've done some amazing things. Well, we have you too. I'm curious your thoughts on Tulsi Gabbard this week. I mean, I don't put any stock on these reports, but there was a Politico report that came out saying she was snubbed because she wasn't invited to this Camp David meeting. But even the Politico article said, it was last minute and a lot of people couldn't make it anyway. And then there were people saying she's back in the good graces of Trump. She could get back in the good graces. Of course, Trump mentioned her when her name came up with that report about Iran's nukes. And she said, no, I said the same thing the president said, right? So I just look at this all like, obviously people are fighting behind the scenes, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts on Tulsi and where she's at.
I can't speak to that exact situation. I somewhat suspect, especially because it was a congressional testimony that led to her getting in trouble. These are one of these examples where the bureaucrats can very easily set up a political appointee. They put together the testimony based on what they claim the agency knows. The director has to go out and make the statement, and then it all falls apart on them, or it contradicts the president, and they're left holding the bag. And that's why you need to have really aggressive political appointees who are going to control their agencies. They're going to get good people underneath them to drive policy down and bring good data up. I'm not sure that we have seen a lot of those lower level appointees to get in there and control some of these agencies the way that we need to take place yet. And that's putting a lot of our higher level appointees like Tulsi Gabbard at best at the mercy of her agency. So that would be the most positive spin I could put on it.
We're gonna take all the positive spins here on a Friday night, Kyle. We've heard firsthand just how difficult it's been for those that are actually trying to go up against the deep state and make some significant changes within the intelligence community. Thanks so much for all your insights tonight.
My pleasure.
Don't go anywhere. We'll have Chris Bedford coming up right after this. Oh, the countdown's on. We're just days away from what has been dubbed the Rio Reset. It's the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar in its global dominance in over 80 years. It's coming up on July 6th. It's the BRICS nations. It's the Russia, China, India, Iran, and many more. They're all expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the U.S. dollar and trying to devalue it. Now, they've already been laying the groundwork. The central banks have already been moving away from the dollar and bonds in favor of gold. So the big question is, how can you protect your IRA or 401k from all of these events? Well, look into diversifying with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of uncertainty, which is definitely right now if you're paying attention. So get a free info kit on tax shelter gold IRAs by texting the word Jill to 989898. July 6th marks a monumental shift happening between the nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. So arm yourself with all the information to diversify your retirement savings. Text Jill to the number 989898 and claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. Israel and Iran have dominated the headlines this week, but the question on everyone's mind, will the United States enter this conflict? White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt gave us this update yesterday.
Regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
So here to break down the political ramifications is our DC politics editor, Chris Bedford. So, Chris, when we look at this, we know Donald Trump, he's known for the art of the deal. So what's the best deal that President Trump could get in a scenario that is as complicated as this one is?
You'd be hard pressed to find an Iranian deal that's going to sit well with either the Israelis or Donald Trump, I think, at this point. They're not going to let nuclear inspectors in. They're not going to give up their material. They're not going to deactivate their centrifuges. Those would all be the absolute musts. So what Israel essentially has to do is push Iran's back against the wall so hard that they have an exit that doesn't make them completely and totally lose face. Right now, their demand to the president is, in order for us to even speak with the American envoy in Europe, you need to get the Israelis to stop hitting us, which leaves little room for exit. And this is something that happens so often in modern conflict, or any kind of conflict, is people don't deny each other the ability to actually find an off-ramp, or they don't think that off-ramp's actually good enough for them. The president also has an option for at least keeping the United States out of this conflict, which is essentially seeing if Israel is able to do this themselves. And I think that may have something to do with something to do with the 2-week delay we're looking at right now.
Yeah, let's talk more about that, because that has been quietly on the table the entire time. And last time, I believe you were talking about, the fact that everyone's talking about you're going to need possibly commandos to go in there. People are going to have to actually physically be on the ground at some point. You need to do that to check to make sure. So when you say that, it's like, well, okay, they're going to do that. So what does that look like? I mean, does that mean, look, we give you the bombs. You use them, or we give them nothing and they just go in and take care of it, physically?
So you have to be careful with these bombs. I'm actually have some meetings later this evening with folks who are pretty good at this to try and get at what exactly this operation would look like.
Right.
But the Moab, which we saw, the bunker busters, which we saw deployed against the Taliban in Trump's first term, it's going to have a different impact against this facility. The Taliban had a bunch of caves in a mountain. It was a major piece of rock, but it's not like it was 100 meters deep, like Mount Cheyenne, reinforced with steel, like you're dealing with right here. The president is not going to want to risk using a bomb like that if there's a chance that it won't even succeed in the first place. You also have to consider the fact of the radioactive spread that it could cause. It's not too far from a major Iranian city and a Muslim holy city. That's something that you have to think about. And at the end of it, just like you said, you're kind of going to need someone on the ground to go in there and make sure it worked. That's a lot more difficult if you put the bomb down there first. Now, it's not easy either way, actually, because nobody really wants to be a commando team like Clint Eastwood were Eagles Dare, fighting their way down into a bunker in hostile territory that's not secured by your own military. That's a brutal fight. But when you're faced with the possibility that this bomb might not even work, that it might cause massive civilian casualties or cancer, who knows what, around the area, it might have lingering effects, that they wouldn't be able to confirm it, and they'd probably have to send people down there anyways, and that the United States would have to get involved when Israel could potentially do this alone, maybe with the United States helping provide air cover to make sure that those commandos are at least able to get in and do the fighting themselves once in there. That starts to look like an actually real option.
I look at this and I can just tell you the number of boomers that have messaged me this week saying like, oh, bunker buster bombs. Like, when are we going to use them? How many? What's the deal? We need to study this. This needs to be studied. We need to put actual federal tax dollars into this, because there is something in the water for all the boomers. So we know the people.
Everyone loves bunker busters. It's like 4th of July for people our age. We're no longer impressed with children's fireworks.
They love them.
But this is they're fun. The mother of all bombs.
It is. So
I mean, the Moab, it made an impression, a cultural impression at the time, and that talk made a cultural impression at the time, and it's still sticking around in the public mind. Everyone knows what these are, and probably overestimates the extent of their effectiveness.
So the people on the right, they're definitely going to be talking about what's going on in the Middle East, and all the Democrats are now like, wait a minute. This is our moment. We found it. This is what you wrote about for your Beltway brief. So how real is this opportunity for the Democrats? And my question, because the way that we've been talking about the Democrats on this show, are they even capable of capitalizing on this with all the current chaos that they have going on the left?
So the Republican Party is really exposed. The full belly is showing right now. A worthwhile opponent of any kind could put some serious damage on the GOP's popularity at the moment. You've got the potential war in the Middle East, which is something that both parties have been campaigning against since 2016. And now there might be a new one from the guy who promised that we weren't going to have any more. He didn't say there wouldn't be any more, but he said there certainly wouldn't be any nation building. And that's something that you have to worry about in situations like this. That's a bare spot that they could hit, but they're not really able to, because their own activists are lunatics. They're out there screaming Free Palestine, which is, as you've seen online, it's basically Allahu Akbar for people with college loans. They're running congressmen off the road. They're committing all kinds of embarrassing, destructive mistakes and attacks. And it's not like the Democrats have any actual politicians who are capable of lifting this banner. You got Mazie Hirono, one of the most annoying and least impressive members of Congress that I can possibly think of, or Senate, out there. And she focused the entire time talking about the Los Angeles riots when she was talking to the Secretary of Defense. That's not a really good use of the political capital. That's talking about something that the Democrats probably shouldn't be talking about. But then you've also got the big, beautiful bill, which is massive, big. Not all of it is beautiful. There's real vulnerabilities in there. Whenever you need to get an entire agenda of an administration through at one time in the modern way that we do politics and we govern, essentially, you're going to have so many different add-ons and Frankenstein things that is sometimes going to have some real weird stuff in there and things that are vulnerabilities for Republicans. Now, the Democrats are looking at the polling and they're saying, well, if we tell people that Republicans are taking away Medicaid, taking away health care, and taking away food stamps, well, they hate that. And they do. Americans, like 65% or so, say, no, don't touch that stuff. Now, Americans aren't really paying attention often to the fact that the Medicaid spending that we're doing in this country has ballooned 56.5% in the last 5 years, basically through Joe Biden's administration and COVID. And that a quarter of the American people are currently on Medicaid or some form of it. And that there are tens of thousands of able-bodied working people who self-report playing video games and watching television for over 4 hours a day, who are taking advantage of this program, that there are dead people on this program, that there are illegal aliens in this program. Now, when Republicans poll for those specific measures, which are addressed in the big, beautiful bill, well, I think it's 86% of Americans support removing the deceased from Medicaid rolls, and the other 14% I don't think you're going to reach. Then you've got these other issues are plus 72, plus 80 something. That's as close as you get to all Americans being in agreement on some political issue as there is. The thing is, though, the Republicans' weakness, which I'll talk about much more on Monday, is potentially when they're going after the provider taxes. Problem for Democrats is that's an extremely complicated subject, but what the Democrats will just say is they're taking your health care, which is actually not exactly what they're doing. They're trying to figure out something out that actually makes it so the states stop stealing from the federal government. That's a whole different segment. But there's a lot of different places where Republicans could be attacked, and Democrats have an opportunity here, like Republicans had in 2010, 11, and 12, to define their opponent's signature legislation, like Republicans did that with Obamacare. But right now, they're tripping over themselves. They can't get over themselves. You got David Hogg over at the DNC being canned, and they couldn't even come up with a good reason. It's like, hey, you basically almost embezzled from the organization and you broke our mission statement. So they blamed it on him being a white male. And then you've got the labor unions, two leaders, Randy Weingarten, the woman responsible for closing down schools for 2 years. She's leaving the DNC. You've got the head of the County, Municipal, and State Employees Union, another major Democratic backer, leaving the DNC. You've got the chairman of the DNC, Ken Martin, crying on phone calls, saying he's absolutely going to fail. There's no way he can do this. Democrats are not poised to take advantage of any of these things in time for the midterms. They're not able to get the money together at the party. All of that's just a major fumble and a completely unforced error for a party that kind of knows what it needs to do in order to fix things. Crazy old James Carville still on TV in his Hawaiian shirts, half drunk at 10 a.m. He says what they need to do, but the activists won't let them. Some of the donors won't let them. And because of that, they're just in this perpetual low-level civil war instead.
Yeah, it's a sight to behold. I have to say, though, if you didn't see it, there is one part of the Republican Party that wants to capitalize on the moment, but also can't, just like the Democrats, and that's the very old school neocons and never Trumpers. I don't know if you saw this, but we should get your quick comment at the end here on Bill Kristol declaring in an article on Twitter that we are all neocons now. I couldn't bear to read the article, but I saw the sentiment, and it did make me laugh because I think the opposite is true.
Bill Kristol is just, you stick around long enough in politics, you become a caricature of yourself. Bill Kristol did that. He peaked too early. He became a caricature of himself too early. I got a friend who, when Donald Trump was elected, who he started to lose his mind a little bit, like a lot of folks in D.C. You know what he did is he left town.
Yeah.
He and his wife traveled. They went around the world. They live in a beautiful cabin on a mountainside where he teaches journalism and he occasionally writes profile pieces. He's like the happiest person I know. He doesn't even have a cell phone. When you start to go crazy because of your profession you have chosen, it is time to leave that profession. And I kind of assumed that Bill Kristol might be going crazy when he was visiting. He saw the Bayeux Tapestry and a tourism trip in Europe. And he said it strikes him that this is somewhat like Twitter. And I thought, man, log off. You're broken. Just stop. It's over. Sit with your money and just log off.
He comes with the best stories, people. He's big, beautiful Bedford. That's why we have him on the show. Thanks so much, Bedford. We'll see you next week.
See you Monday.
All right, don't go anywhere. We have Julio Rosas coming up right after this. On Thursday, the Los Angeles Dodgers faced an unlikely opponent, ICE. The team's official X account claimed that DHS agents tried to access Dodger Stadium, but they were denied entry. There's only one problem with this story. ICE denies that there were any agents there. So here to weigh in on the controversy is Blaze Media's national correspondent, Julio Rosas. So Julio, I look at this story and I'm like, man, the Dodgers, they're no stranger to politics. This comes up quite often. When you're in Los Angeles, these things are going to happen. But unpack this latest fiasco for us.
Well, what happened was that it was Customs and Border Protection, and specifically Border Patrol. And of course, people were saying, well, how could you tell? You could clearly see in the photos and videos from that staging area where you have on their vest that says, Border Patrol and police. So that's problem number one. But problem number two is just that Los Angeles in particular, but the country as a whole is right now, they are just hypersensitive and hypervigilant. So, there was a case with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's office or department having to put out a statement saying that their unmarked units, which police departments and sheriff's offices across the country, they use unmarked vehicles as well for various reasons, and they had to say that their deputies were accused of being ICE when obviously that wasn't the case. And so the problem is that this has been stoked for a very long time, and Democrats and the media have been very irresponsible in their reporting on operations, so that when there's any hint of any sort of a perceived real or not immigration enforcement operation, people right now are primed to just overreact. And so in response to this ICE, supposed ICE sighting, people were protesting and blocking traffic ahead of the Dodgers game that day. So it just shows how crazy people have become over this when the whole reason why we're in this mess in the first place, primarily, is that we had an open border for 4 years and the administration is trying to get a handle of this very massive problem that they won on through promising mass deportations.
Yeah, it's. I mean, do you think we're going to see? It's a sign that perhaps this isn't over. We're going to see more and more of this throughout the summer. You think the energy is still there? People are still so raw over this.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why for this past weekend I started in Seattle, and then I was in Los Angeles, and then I just came back from Portland, Oregon. And so this is. The initial outburst has kind of died down, but again, this ICE sighting, supposed sighting when it was Border Patrol, it shows that this is going to be kind of the norm from now on, and it is going to make things harder. It is going to make things difficult because the reason why Border Patrol was initially at that parking lot is because they had arrested some individuals and they were waiting on transportation. They couldn't do it at the original location because there were people there, so they used this other parking lot, but then people showed up there, so they had to leave. So they're trying their best. The bystanders and the agitators are trying their best to interfere and interrupt these operations. And that's why, for example, in Portland, they're targeting the ICE building there, which has been targeted multiple times in the past in that city as well for different reasons. So I think that especially now that we're entering summer full time, for the time being, this is going to be kind of the norm. And then even let's say when winter sets in and most of the country is cold, Los Angeles doesn't get that cold in the winter compared to the rest of the nation. So I think people are establishing their own community watch patrols and counter surveillance for immigration officials, and so I think this is going to be kind of the norm in terms of certain people's reaction for the foreseeable future, as long as the Trump administration is still in office.
All right, so let's stay with Portland. I used to live there. I know how crazy everything can get there. You wrote a piece for theblaze.com talking about the ICE facility, how it's under constant siege. So take us through what you've seen from Antifa and what they're doing in that city.
Well, they're mobilizing. They have been waiting for an opportunity to do this again, because the last time I was actually at that particular ICE facility was back in January 20th, 2021, when Biden became president, and they wanted to show that it didn't matter if it was Republican or Democrat. We want the American empire, quote unquote, to fall. And so I'm very familiar with that area because I've been there a number of times. But yeah, basically what they're doing is they trespass on the property. They're blocking the driveway, which is to the compound, and so they don't let the vehicles leave, which forces it seems to be a combination of Customs and Border Protection's BORTAC units, which is kind of their elite special forces type unit, along with the Federal Protective Service, which is kind of the police force for federal property and federal buildings. It forces those guys to come out, clear everybody out so that vehicles can come and go. And so that's been happening basically all this past week. And there hasn't been a lot of media attention on it just because it is dangerous. It's hard to cover Antifa movements like that just because they're very concerned about either media that they don't like us, or supposed undercover police amongst their crowd. So it's kind of like a cat and mouse game to try to not get caught. And at worst they'll just force you out of the area, or I'm sorry, at best they'll force you out of the area. But as we've seen with some other journalists, like in Seattle, they've been attacked physically, in some cases very seriously. And that's just kind of how just insane the Pacific Northwest is. I always like to say that I only go to Portland for work, and that's certainly true today, because at least with Los Angeles and kind of that area, there's still certain things to appreciate about it. But I cannot say the same thing about Portland. I absolutely despise having to go there. But I'm also happy to go there at the same time, because I'm more than happy to cover the riots that tend to happen there.
It is unbelievable to me that, here we are 5 years later, and we're still dealing with this in America. These groups that we somehow can't get off the streets. It's unbelievable, but it does keep you gainfully employed, and you do great work covering this stuff. We should mention, though, speaking of Los Angeles, that someone else was in Los Angeles just this week. J.D. Vance is there. Tell us a little bit about that. Amidst all this rising tension about ICE raids, J.D. Vance rolls into town.
Well, I think it sends a message. I mean, he obviously he's a Marine, and there are Marines there to, again, helping protect federal infrastructure there. But I think it's just to show that the administration is serious when they're doing something like this. And look, it is unfortunate that we're having to send the Marine Corps into a city. Although I guess you could say that with the riots there, it's kind of almost like a foreign occupied city. But it just sends the message that we're here to support you guys and to keep up the good work, and we're going to see this through. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks, just because immigration enforcement operations are still ongoing. I mean, I was with Border Patrol during an operation earlier this week, and they're still doing stuff, right? So this isn't going to end, and that's what I really want people to understand, is that whether you're in a big city like Los Angeles or you're in one of these small agricultural towns, there is going to be a reaction of some kind whenever this is going to take place. And so it can manifest itself in very big, chaotic ways, or maybe a little bit less disruptive. But people should be prepared for anything to happen, just because in 2020, when I was covering the riots there, it wasn't just big cities. It was smaller-ish towns like Kenosha or Wauwatosa. Those places wouldn't immediately jump to mind, but it got pretty destructive. It got pretty violent there, because people, can gather at any place in time. And so, because the issue of illegal immigration is so much larger than, let's say, BLM, any unrest can really take place anywhere. And so that's what I would have people keep at top of mind, just to be prepared for anything to happen, really.
The theme of this is all of the craziness on the West Coast, and that's why we all left for greener pastures. Julio Rosas, thanks so much.
Of course, thanks.
Don't go anywhere. We're actually going to highlight The View. We haven't done this in quite some time, so you know it's going to be good. Stay with us. Well, there are so many things, right? So what's worse, living in America or in Iran? Well, View co-host Whoopi Goldberg says it's the same for Black Americans in our clip of the week.
Just remember, too, the Iranians literally throw gay people off of buildings. They don't adhere to basic human rights.
Listen, here's the thing. Let's not do that, because if we start with that, we have been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car.
Where the Iranian regime is today in 2025 is nothing compared to the United States.
Keep hanging black people. So
it is not even the same. I couldn't step foot during this.
Wait. That's not what you mean to say. It is the same.
No, it's not. The year 2025 in the United States is nothing like if I step foot wearing this outfit in Tehran and killed for
I'm sorry.
Well, they look like Iranian. No, I can't have my hair showing. I can't wear a skirt. I can't have my arms out.
I'm telling you,
I literally said it was up to the Iranian people.
Yes,
it is up to them.
And that's why I am saying that it is the same. Murdering someone for their difference is not good, whoever does it.
That's why I am saying, I think as I was watching Matthew watch this clip, it feels like you lost brain cells watching this clip this week.
I feel I can't move, really. That was a long time to suffer in that way. It's very intense suffering.
But you can understand that in the year 2025, Whoopi Goldberg makes no points at all.
I don't know. Okay, how long, oh Lord, how long do we have to listen to this kind of argument? It's in the back of everyone's head because you learned it in school, right? I mean, if you grew up anytime in the last 40 years, America's bad. America did all the bad things. And so anything bad that other people did, we did it, and we did it even worse. And you just have to stop and wonder why they're still on air at this point. I mean, to compare what's going on in Iran with, America 2025 is absolutely crazy. But these people are crazy, and they keep on going. And, they also know that just propaganda works, unlike the right. If you keep saying the same things over and over again, it still has an effect, and it clogs up the airwaves. It had an effect for a long time. I think that effect is dwindling, right, for people like Whoopi. You were talking the other day. Remember when Whoopi was just like a funny actress? She's like a cool, funny actress that people liked.
There was a time. It's hard to believe, but there was actually a time. If you measure your decades in Rebecca Zelko's, as we now have to do on this show, she would have no clue that actually was a real thing in this country.
There was a time when we all liked Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, she didn't talk about politics and,
But the most concerning part of that clip for me was not just Whoopi, because we know that she's gone completely senile. Yeah. It's actually the people in the audience that are clapping for her. Like, right. Oh, this needs to be very good. Yes, this is something that we need to applaud.
It doesn't even that. It feels very fake and performative. It feels like it's very tired. And, most Americans don't believe it. So, okay, fine. But I'm not going to get those brain cells back. They don't grow back.
You are not. And that is my fault. And I will take full responsibility with a smile on my face while I do it. But the one thing that we need to make sure that the American people actually do, let's end on a positive note. It is a Friday night. We need to keep our eye on the prize, and we need to make sure that we are still going after the goals of the Trump administration. The show's called The Mandate, after all. We need to make sure that things, whether it's, one person or another that comes into the administration, the pieces might change, but the goals will remain the same at the end of the day.
Yeah, so look, there's no blackpilling. This is summer in America in 2025. You look outside, the sun is shining, or there's a thunderstorm. We like that energy too. We're taking the energy of summer, and we're going to have a great summer. I was just looking at the cover of the latest edition of Frontier. It's not been finalized yet. I can't tell you what it is, but it is summer, and there is water involved. So there's no blackpilling because of politics. You can't sit around and say, oh, well, the Trump administration is over because of X, Y, and Z when these things haven't even played out fully yet. The truth is we're in the beginning now of the war, the internal war once after, post-election. So Trump gets in, most people are in office, and here's what happens next. We push for the agenda, for the mandate, to be implemented, and that means ensuring that the deportations actually happen, something all of our audience care about, everyone in America should care about. That's why Trump was elected. That means actually reforming the deep state in some way. That means actually going after people who committed acts of wrongdoing. And the more that there's public pressure being put on the administration, the more the administration will do what Trump ultimately wants it to do, which is to implement the Trumpian mandate that was issued by the American people in 2024. So in order to do that, right, that's just going to be work. It's hard work. And that hard work is going to go on, and people are going to fight, and people are going to come in and out of the administration. Good and bad people are going to come in and out of the administration. But it doesn't matter. All that matters is over time, we're pushing that agenda forward, and that people's feet are held to the fire to be accountable and to implement it. And no one of these issues is going to kill the momentum of a 55 to 60% of America movement. I mean, it's not going away. It's now establishing itself. So, a lot of people I see just, they feel kind of strange right now with the internal wars going on, and some of them, what's going on with Iran, that's terrible. What if we get into regime change? Well, we're not there yet, but now's the time to argue, to debate, to push, and for us to shine a light on what's going on. And this is all perfectly normal and healthy, so long as we get where we need to go.
I think that we see two major things. One, we didn't just jump into the war like any of the neocons back in the day would have just said, oh, yeah, okay, let's jump right in, dive headfirst in. Donald Trump's like, you know what? I'm going to take 2 weeks. I'm going to actually go through all of the options. I'm not going to rush into anything. The second thing that we were talking about with Julio Rosas, J.D. Vance is out there in Los Angeles today. I think that's an important message that, right? Like, okay, you guys, you can go crazy if you want to. That's fine. You can protest. You can do whatever you want. But we don't need to send Donald Trump out there. But you know what? We can send J.D. Vance out there, and we can kind of just see and feel and figure out how things actually look on the ground. And he can go through, have the talks that he needs to have with, Karen Basses of the world. I don't envy him for that. But then go back and tell Donald Trump, okay, this is what's actually happening, because these things do need to happen. We're not just going to go through and do things business as usual. We're not just jumping headfirst into a war, and we're not just going to let you get away with saying, oh, you know what? We don't like your deportation, so you need to stop it. No, this isn't what the American people voted for, so that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, and it was such a great point, Jill. I mean, the fact that he's going to L.A. is really important. It's really important to show up and to be in these places just saying, no, this is what we're going to do. Dad is home, and there's no options here. You got to go with the program. And I think the more that happens, you can see it happening on the other side. If you think anyone on the right's demoralized right now, they're the ones who are being demoralized. So that's a good thing. Let's keep going.
Sunshine, thunderstorms, it doesn't matter. We are going to keep moving forward. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here on Monday.
Summer energy.